Hello and welcome to Economic Times TV. I'm Lopamudra Ghatak from the economictimes.com and we have a very distinguished guest joining in. One of India Inc.'s stellar professionals, she's been a stalwart in the financial and banking sector. She has also been one of India's representatives on the 5-member BRICS Business Council. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Ms. Naina Lal Kidwai. Hello Ms. Kidwai and welcome to this special show. You have mentioned 2 years ago that you emphasized on the fact that India needs to shed its image of being a very difficult place to invest in. So, do you think the climate of investment in the country, there has been any remarkable change?
So there's clearly a change. In fact, if you look at the rankings, they have gone up quite dramatically, which tells us that there are factual changes in what is required to happen in the environment in terms of the legislation, tax and administration therein, which are improving and I would say substantially improving. We still have a long way to go. We started at the bottom of the list, and everything that has to happen is not, unfortunately, just at the central level. It percolates down, in fact in many ways is even more critical at the state level. Some states are already there. I would say, in fact, if you look at what India ultimately shows up as, it's an average. We have some states that are positively world-class in the engagement and others which are absolutely at the bottom of the pile. We have to work to make sure that all states are attractive destinations, because we otherwise run a danger of some getting left behind. But I have no doubt that the attractiveness of India to business, if you look at a large number of the states, is clearly there. And we must therefore continue to push those states to get to be world standard, even as we work on the laggards to get them up to a level. Challenges are plenty ahead of us, a lot of work to be done, but directionally absolutely right.
So staying with a better state and center coordination, the government recently managed to pass the GST bill after much negotiation and a lot of political parlays. Yes. How do you see the GST improving the business climate of the country? Because that's one area where the onus lies completely on the states, and they'll have to do it. So how do you see that enhancing the business climate?
So one of the big contentious issues was always around tax, multiple taxes, paying at different sources. Open to interpretation, huge amount of time going in legal processes, largely around tax and interpretation of tax issues. So that clarity should certainly emerge now, in that you have a uniform rate, it's applicable across the country, and the ability to pay it at one point therefore ensures that you do not have issues in terms of transparency of tax and administration of tax. So that's terrific. Another big advantage is that the octroys and the taxes on logistics and movements of goods will no longer be applicable the way they are at borders, which means time lost, very precious time lost, as we've all seen huge queues of trucks at every border, should go away. So the ability for free movement of goods in a manner which reduces time on the road, and I've seen studies which suggest that they could drop to half to 25% of the current time it takes in terms of movement. Imagine that saving both in terms of interest cost and cost of transportation. So these advantages will come to every company in terms of a lower cost to a consumer, which makes products much more competitive. So certainly a big positive for the domestic environment. There are clearly still areas which need resolution on the way the GST is to be implemented. There is, I think, a lot of confusion right now on how the GST will apply at each state.
The fine print is yet to be deciphered.
And the implementation for companies that are national, and how they will impose the tax at each state level. So, but the good news is the backbone for this is going to be a strong IT system, and whatever happens would therefore be seamless, with none of the typical paperwork and multiple copies and all the issues therein that we have had to rely on. So it's absolutely a winner. I have no doubt that the GDP of this country rises just because of the GST by 1.5% to 2%. The only issue is we won't see it in the next 12 months. It may be 24 months before that benefit flows through.
That's a very positive endorsement of the GST coming from you. You started your career at a time when there weren't too many women professionals in corporate India. So what did it feel to be a woman in a man's world? I'm sure you've been asked this many times over, but I just want to ask: did you face any kind of sexism at the workplace, or was there any misogyny that you ever encountered in your 3-decade-long career?
Yeah, so 1982, and you're right, there were not many women in the world of banking. You would hardly believe it today, seeing how not only the numbers but just the senior leadership.
Also, the leadership in banking is now very women driven.
Yeah,
and it's a good thing.
It's a great thing, of course, and I think the banks are in better shape because of it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would say that. When I entered the workplace, I think I had the good fortune of being in a work environment in a multinational bank, which people were probably curious, but certainly were not sexist in their approach. There was clearly, I think at that time, a much more focus on seniority. So it wasn't just the fact that I was a woman, but that I was young. That also got in the way, because many of the companies were moving into becoming a meritocracy. But they were far more geared into, well, you have to do 3 years in one role and 4 years in another, as against the best person rises fastest. I was fortunate that I was in a company that was beginning to change into being much more of a meritocracy, which enabled me to rise on performance. And because performance became the most important criteria, everything else was far less important. I think there were times one had to fight to basically say, I can do as well as anyone, so I shouldn't be left aside. Yes. Don't assume I won't go to place A or B.
Just because of my gender.
Ask me. Let me say yes or no. So those rules of engagement did need to be established, and there was a lot of, on my part, let's say, hard bargaining and reminding that performance had to be the most important criteria. But I worked with people who were by and large, I think, supportive to these concepts, which really helped. Otherwise, it would have been a real issue. I wish I could have said that for all of India.
Yes.
Clearly, we had many companies at the time that had policies, particularly the marketing companies, that they would not hire women because they didn't know how they could manage them in the marketplace, on sales calls, traveling across the country. Because traveling across the country those days was very hard. You didn't have decent hotels, you certainly didn't have decent toilets. Where do you go? And as a result, it was really in much more office, urban environments that women first began to enter, and banking was a natural space.
Banking, yes. I think after teaching banking would probably be the most easy and safe at that time.
Yes, at that. And then we saw a certain growth in the other service sectors as well.
But do you think workplace gender equality, it's 2016 now, do you think it's improved it's way better than what it was?
Oh, absolutely. So I think the trajectory is set. I don't even think it's an issue. If you look in most firms now, they will hire women. In those days, I'm saying there were firms that say they would not hire women.
Yes.
I mean, so today, that's not an issue. The issue now is much more the percentages. The issue remains one of, as women rise through the system, at certain points on their life cycle, typically when they will have kids, they do drop away from the workplace. So the way firms are now learning to engage with these same women is, how can you attract them back when they're ready to come back? How do you stay engaged with them? Can you have them on periods of flexible timings so that they don't have to cut off completely? Because we used to be very rigid in the old days.
Which I think the entry of a lot of multinationals has also kind of eased that, because a lot of them have very friendly policies. And
it's not just multinationals. The good news is the
IT companies also have followed suit. Yes.
Technology itself enables it, because you can work from home today, which was not really possible there. So I think we will benefit as women from the availability of technology, firms being far more flexible. The rigidity of you must come in at 9 and you must be in the office till 5 goes. The fact that you may be out there making marketing calls is encouraged. As long as you deliver on outcomes, it's important. As long as you clock in over a certain period, which is required, sometimes it's office meetings, etc., to be there, and you learn to manage your schedule accordingly. In fact, I've often argued that if you look at sales people, someone who's available to do sales calls post 5 o'clock, to go home for selling something which requires that, to people when they are home, because with dual career couples now,
right,
you're at office in the day.
Right.
The way we work and engage in the world of commerce has to change. So why not have someone who is flexible, who may prefer to work in hours and ways that suit them? I myself, as a working mom, found the time between 9 and 12 at night ideal for me, because I put my kid to bed and I wanted to be able to do it. And I was fortunate, I worked in a company which had huge connects with the US at the time. With
so it also
Stanley,
helped
and they needed me
yes,
on call at that time. So I was able to clock out between 6 to 8, 5 to 8 when I wanted to be home, and clock back in thereafter. And it's that kind of flexibility that we should be able to work out with our respective employers.
You've also you've been in the industry for over 3 decades now. How have you managed to strike work-life balance? I mean, that is what is that one message that you would want to give to working women and young women who are on the path of taking up a profession? What is that one thing that you would say that will just help us glow through?
It's a very tough question because it is so individual. How important is work to you? How do you determine when you are beside your sick kid's bed or at an important meeting at work? It's so individual. It depends on the decisions that you have to make at that, and we are always having to make these decisions. I only like to describe this as the two crystal balls of work and life. And they're crystal balls because you're a juggler, you have to keep them in the air, and if you let them drop, they're going to crash and break into pieces. And only you can know how you have to keep those two balls in the air. The third ball is what I call the me ball, which is a rubber ball that you let drop. It's the things you love to do. It's the music concerts that you don't go to because you're trying to keep these other two balls in the air. But that doesn't matter because it's a rubber ball. It's on the ground. You can pick it up and again juggle it with the other two when you're ready. Interestingly, when I put together this book called 30 Women,
the one you edited,
their vision, their stories, there were at least 4 women in the book who said they didn't see the me ball as a rubber ball.
Oh,
so for them, life was even tougher to my mind. They had a third crystal ball, which was very critical for them, which they needed to keep in the air to be happy through the process. So that's really what I mean. How we do it is going to be about balancing that out. But the one solution that we all fortunately have in India is support and help. Domestic help is affordable. Family is by and large there with us. And if we can learn to use every piece of support available to us, and the great institution of the mother-in-law, and many of the women in the book interestingly depended more on their mother-in-laws than they did on their mothers.
Yes.
So maybe you can bully your mother-in-law too sometimes. that support, I certainly did. My mother-in-law was a huge support for me. And if we can use every mechanism and system available to us, then it's the only way really to ensure that we can make this great balancing act work for us.
Okay, that's a very interesting insight that you've given, the mother-in-law and juggling. So who is Miss Naina Lal Kidwai when she's not in the boardroom? How would you define what kind of a person is it? Are you like an outdoor, indoor, music, sports, cinema? What is it? What is it that you are?
Well, it's like anything. It's all of these. My real deep interest is in wildlife, which is where we go for our holidays as a family, short breaks, 4 days into the jungles in India, and that has always been a big thrill for me and for us. And I'm glad that I can do it more now that I've retired, at least from a full day job to a much more flexible working job. So wildlife, yes, music, both classical and Western and Indian classical music. Fortunately, you can hear that wherever you are. I hope to go to the concerts like I used to when I was younger, but I certainly enjoy that. And ultimately, it is about spending more time with people one loves and wants to spend more time with. It's a time which I never really had, and time which I'm now hoping to utilize better than I have in the past. Yeah.
Okay, and we certainly hope that you are able to utilize your time and you are able to indulge your passions. Thank you very much. It was lovely having you.
Thank you.
And on that note, it's time for us to wrap this special show. From all of us here at Economic Times TV, it's bye for now. But keep watching and don't forget to log on to www.economictimes.com for more news updates. Thank you.